Sashi Pugi Jukshin Litotram Rira Vinci Ninde Gimpadi Sange Shindu Lite Uargi Drokunanda Shinla Juparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamitayami Sange Chudam Sukhi Chonam La Jangchu Bardu Dapi Gyamsuchi Daki Chenye Gibe Sunam Ki Trola Penchir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudam Sokhi Choknam La Jangchu Bardu Daki Kyasuchi Daki Chenyen Gibe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudam Sokhi Choknam La Jangchu Bardu Daki Kyasuchi Daki Chenyen Gibe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sange Druparsho.
Get comfortable. If you want to lie down, you can also lie down and do it in supine pose as well. Let's begin, as always, by relaxing. Begin to relax your body fully. Letting your awareness descend from the head all the way to the ground. Begin setting your body at ease. And allow yourself to breathe. Begin to settle your mind further by releasing any concerns that you might have, any fears that you might be holding. Release all the stress, worries, anxieties carried throughout the day. Begin to let it all go. So all you're doing is focusing on feeling your breath. And then we start the meditation with the first question, which is, at this moment, what would it feel like to be truly happy? As these ideas come to mind, begin using your breath and every out breath to arouse the aspiration of this feeling that you wish to have. What would it feel like to be happy? To have everything that you seek for. Breathing life into this vision, this feeling. Continue arousing this loving aspiration that you might have for yourself. And then move into the realm of possibility. So with each out breath, imagine what it would look like right now if it were to happen. Imagine what it would feel like. How would you embody that moment or moments? Then moving on to the second question, we begin with the observation that in order to realize the happiness that we seek, that we can't do it alone, that our lives are so intertwined with one another. So with this awareness, in order to realize the happiness that you seek, what would you love to receive from the world around you? What kind of support do you want and need? What would enable you to realize what you so desire? How would that feel like to you? And in the spirit of loving kindness, with each in-breath, arouse the feeling, filling your body with this aspiration. And in the spirit of this loving kindness, begin to visualize and embody at this moment if you were to be receiving what you need from the world. If reality were to rise up to meet you, how would that feel like and look like? And for the last question for tonight, we end with, in order to receive such happiness and well-being, it's not enough to receive help from just the outside world. Most times there's some sort of inner transformation or blockage that needs to be dispelled. So how would you love to transform? How would you love to evolve? How would you love to change? What would that feel like to you in order to realize the happiness that you seek? Begin to imagine what that evolution could be like. The inner causes that can lead to the causes you desire. And use every out-breath to arouse the aspiration for inner transformation that will bring change to you. And for the remainder of the time, begin to imagine that transformation taking place right now. Imagine becoming the person you love to become. What would that person be like? All right, here we go. Class 9, almost there. We're going to start with, so this is Tibetan. You don't have to repeat, but we'll do the Tibetan so that it's grounded. All the teachings are grounded in scripture, by the way, so it's not my interpretation, although I will color it and let you know when that's colored by me. So we'll start with this term here. Can we say samena? Samena. Again, samena. Samena. So sam is interim, or another way that's also interpreted is intermediate birth. Me is none, and na is 5. So you're kind of going backwards. 5, none, intermediate birth, which really is the main statement, is about the 5 heinous bad deeds. What we're going to talk about are the 5 kind of immediate misdeeds, meaning that there are 5 specific deeds that will officially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and right now we're in the Abhidharma system, which there's different systems that we've been talking about within the Buddhist tradition. We're talking about the Abhidharma, so we're back at Abhidharma now. And what they're saying is that there are 5 specific deeds that will take you straight to hell. And so when they say intermediate birth or interim, that there is no intermediate birth. Like there's no rebirth in between you going to hell. It's just that your next birth goes straight to hell. Are we okay with tech? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So 5 heinous deeds that we're going to cover tonight, which is actually kind of good for the first class to karma. I know. We did the what goes and comes around, the first 5. So if you're interested too, we do record all the classes online, and you can always go back in. If you give me your email address, I can also send you a link, and you can catch up if you're interested. Okay, the first one, can we say ma supa?
Ma supa.
So ma is mother, and supa is kill. So the first one, and this is not a specific order. We'll go into it later about the kind of order of worst to even worse. So the first one is killing your mother. We've talked about killing your mother a few different times, and every course it seems to kind of pop up. And there's an interesting story in the reading that talks about if, for instance, you were conceived, and this is so fascinating because you have to remember how old these teachings are, right? So there's a story in the teachings that talk about if you were to be, come on. However, wherever, we have plenty of space. If you were to be conceived in one womb, and then taken from that womb and put into another womb. Isn't that awesome that they're talking about this back then? I find this so fascinating. So anyway, you're in one room and you're put into another womb. Which mother would it be technically that would be considered your mother if you were to kill?
The one who gave birth to you? Or I guess it's conceived or birth.
Conceived.
It's conceived. Yeah, why do you think conceived? You were very kind of clear. You're like conceived.
You created the person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your seeds created.
Your seeds created the person, yeah. So if it's not so much who's carrying you, but actually who conceived your actual physical birth. Yeah, exactly. Which I just think is, I don't know, I was kind of nerding out by myself. But just to note, this is not in homework or anything, but there are 4 ways to be born in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There is to be born from an egg. There is to be born in a womb. There is to be born from heat and wetness. It's another way.
What?
Heat and wetness. So like bugs will sometimes be born. They're not really born in a womb or by an egg, but it's just like moisture. Like that, you know. Or you can be born complete. Like you're already, there's Padmasambhava was born complete. So there's also the possibility of just being born. Beings in different realms will be born complete. They're not hatched or given birth to. They're just pop up and they're full form. Okay? Does that make sense? 4 different ways to be born.
Could you do that again, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah, 4 different ways. It's so yeah, of course. There's technically four different ways to be born. There's the egg, like you're born in some sort of egg or shell, is what I think about. To be born out of a womb, to be born out of heat and wetness, or to be born just complete as is.
Complete as is?
Like just complete. You're just born complete.
Mm-hmm.
You're not growing. There's no kind of incubation stages or different stages.
Out of
All those out of your karma. Let's just leave it to that. That feels good. Yeah, 4 different ways. Because you have to remember, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we're talking about different realms too. We don't believe that this is the only realm in which we live in. So sometimes people ask, like, do Tibetan Buddhists believe in aliens? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'll call them aliens, but they do believe that there are multiple realms that we are in, that exist.
So even if you're complete,
Mm-hmm.
there will be a rebirth?
Yes, you're always reborn. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, technically, we've all been born in all 4 different ways.
And in all different realms too?
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, out of the 6, sure. That would make sense.
Being that we're humans now, you're saying.
You're just humans now in this rebirth. And the idea is that as you become more advanced in your spiritual practice, let's leave it that way, that you can be born outside of the 6 realms, and that's where enlightenment would be, and nirvana.
I was going to ask about the Buddha.
Mhm.
How he fits in with the...
Doesn't fit in the 6 realms.
Okay.
Yeah, outside the realms. Yeah. Okay. What do you remember that the 6 realms were? Anyone? No, we're not talking about realms tonight. That's okay. We did realms before. But anyway, there are 6 different realms. Okay, second one. Pa Supa. So if Ma Supa was mom, Pa Supa would be probably the dad. Yeah. So it's killing your father is the second one. And you know, when we so I'll just tell you the story too. So there's a story, also a debate in the teachings in the scripture that talks about if your father were to have changed sexes, which I think is so cool too. So I'm like, what? Back then, that's so cool. But if your father were to change genders, would that still count? If he is now a she, would that still count as her being your father?
Yes.
Yeah, the answer would be yes.
He conceived.
He conceived you, right? So I just think like these scenarios are so fascinating because these teachings are so incredibly old, and yet so relevant. It's kind of freaky. As far as killing your parents, most of us are not, I hope probably all of us are not sitting there plotting our parents' death in any way, right? It's not usually like that. Like, there might be moments where you have maybe a moment where, like, I wish they weren't here. But you're not plotting their death. And so the way that it relates to today in more kind of relevant times are going to be in ways of the dying process for your parents, for instance, which we've talked about in the past. If your parents are on life support, for instance, or how do you facilitate, is there euthanasia, things like that is really the kind of more modern way of how we think about killing your parents. Okay.
But what about diminishing a parent? Isn't that like killing a parent?
It's not the same, but there are karmic implications for that. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, not consciously
Sure.
diminishing it, but,
Oh, accidentally.
Yeah.
Any type of, so the thing about karma, that it's motivated by intention. So your intention does impact the kind of karma that you have, or the karma that you planned. But if you're doing it out of, unintentionally, that's a different type of karma than intentionally doing it. And you feel that energetically too. Sometimes you accidentally, and this is me, I accidentally, because I'm just not being aware, will walk in the middle of the sidewalk not realizing I'm in the way of people. And there are times where Armando and I are walking, he's like, you have to scoot over. There are people behind you. I'm like, I had no idea. I didn't know I was creating a ruckus back there. But I was. There are people that are so frustrated. They're trying to move this way and that way. And I'm talking with my hands and that happens. Or like when I'm with my umbrella, I have to be a little bit more aware of that. So that's different than making a decision, walking down the street to be a complete jackass, right? And just being like, whatever, I'm not, right? So there is that kind of different energy that goes into it. So it would be the same thing that would apply with parents. Yeah. Okay. Number 3, can we say Drakopa Supa?
Drakopa Supa.
Drakopa means enemy destroyer or arhat, and Supa is kill. So it's to kill an enemy, to kill an arhat. What's an arhat? Sometimes we hear it's foe destroyer. Someone who's seen emptiness. What else has this person?
Has he reached nirvana?
Yeah. So someone who's reached nirvana. Mm-hmm. So killing someone who has reached nirvana. Okay. And yeah, I can go back. While we're here on the nirvana conversation, what is the difference? Because we can never hear this enough. What's the difference between nirvana and enlightenment?
Nirvana is the permanent cessation of mental afflictions, and enlightenment.
Wait, before you go,
Okay.
So permanent cessation of mental afflictions. Can you say it in like human regular terms?
Human regular
Yeah.
terms. Sorry, I was barking before.
For those of us that are like, what?
It is a state where you as a person are not subject to your mental afflictions.
It's a mental affliction.
Like anger or jealousy or anything, so you're not suffering anymore from the normal state of being human, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing that afflicts your mind, the thing that disrupts your mind, right? Yeah. Which we all have. Yeah. How many today? Wouldn't that be an interesting game? That would be an interesting app, like a global app. Like how many afflictions, and you just hit a button. Oh my god! Oh my god!
6 times.
That's so funny you say that. That would be because I have my Apple Watch, and then I always notice when there's something happening, the
heart rate increase.
the beat. No, the breath app pops up, and it's like time to breathe, and I'm like, shut up, no time to breathe. And it like vibrates, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's so interesting, and I'm like, how does it know? I need to change it, but I haven't had it. It's like, but it like has this pulsating. It's like it's trying to get me to breathe, so it vibrates and it comes down, and it's like, what? But yeah, that would be
cool. Like if you're getting angry,
like an affliction
exhale
counter.
longer, inhale,
that would be interesting. Ming, there's your $1 million idea.
Yes.
We all get equity stake, no?
Yes.
Maybe, okay. But yeah, that would be interesting to just
if I had that technology, actually somebody, I don't know who mentioned it, if you would be operating all the time as if everyone could see your thoughts, that might change the way you think.
Totally. Totally, of course.
For better.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, so nirvana is when you don't have those afflictions. What's enlightenment? Because they're not the same destination.
And we don't have those afflictions, and we brought, and we're helping other people to
Also do.
not have those afflictions.
So the motivation is different. So nirvana, the motivation is what versus enlightenment?
Free yourself.
So nirvana is the motivation to say, I want to free myself from all this suffering. And enlightenment is
Doing that for yourself and for the sake of others.
I want me and all of you to come with me. Yeah. That's like the kind of simplified version of it, but that's really the ultimate difference. Okay, there is a difference between the two of them.
And an Arya is someone who's had the direct perception of emptiness and who has bodhicitta, what we were just saying, right?
An Arya, yes.
Just has,
Yeah.
But an Arya doesn't necessarily need to have bodhicitta, right?
They don't necessarily. That was the
An Arya
difference.
is just somebody who's seen direct emptiness.
Direct perception of emptiness, yes. However, I would probably say that
Because people who reach nirvana who don't have bodhicitta have to have been an Arya at some point.
yeah. Technically, yes. It doesn't, from my understanding, an Arya hasn't necessarily had bodhicitta, doesn't have to have bodhicitta. It's someone who's had the direct perception of emptiness. But there are, I've heard debates of whether or not some form of bodhicitta needs to be involved to be able to have the karma to have direct perception. Like, what's the virtue that's involved to have the direct perception of emptiness? I have heard that too. But yeah. Okay, so those are the two, in case anyone was wondering or needed a refresher. Number 4, can we say Gendun? Giyen Jepa. Gendun is Sangha. You've heard the name Gendu. Have you guys heard Gendu? His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. One of his names is Gendun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, right? And then Giyen Jepa is to divide. To do. Divide to do. It means creating a schism. It's dividing the Sangha.
Sangha, and this means community?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's the figurative, there's the what's considered the figurative Sangha, and then there's what's considered the real Sangha. The figurative Sangha in this is specifically monks that are robed.
I've seen paintings there.
That's the real Sangha.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So they're like in
Ultimate
the,
and relative.
yeah. So there's figurative Sangha, which is what this one is speaking to, and then a real Sangha technically would be a group of
Quorum of 5.
4, at least 4 and above. It's 4 monks or more. It's a community of monks.
Is that dividing?
Dividing. Did it say?
It says dividing.
Oh yeah, no, it's dividing.
Here we go.
It's one of those days.
What is Sangha?
What's Sangha? So in here they're so technically in the way that they're using Sangha is 4 monks or more. So it's a community of Sanghas. Community of monks. That's how they're saying it. Sometimes you'll hear Sangha in terms of real Sangha, which are people who have direct perception of emptiness. What's the direct perception of emptiness?
Correct view.
What's correct view?
When we embody understanding the world with correct view. So it's not just like getting it at an intellectual level. It's like getting it, like really getting it, like experiencing what it's like to like understand that like the world is coming from us.
Right. Okay, so quickly to break it down, when we talk about these concepts of emptiness, actually, something you were talking about it in your group, right? Want to do it again? Let's do it again.
So the direct perception of emptiness or correct view refers to realizing that objects or nouns, as we like to think of it, they don't have a self-existent nature. So that's like things, people, places, experiences, feelings, emotions. Oftentimes we interact in our world thinking that that's how it is, it's happening to me. But in reality, it's the object is just, it's out there, but we are labeling it, we are perceiving it with a certain, like, with perceptions that are influenced by our karma. These seeds that you've planted in the past or in a past life, which are ripening in that moment for you to perceive the object as such. An easy way to kind of think about it is like everything is like this blank white screen, and you are the projector that's just projecting the film and the content and the feeling and the mood and everything on it.
Does that make sense?
Including on yourself.
Including on yourself, especially yourself. Well, I don't know, for me. I exist this way. How dare you treat me that way or speak to me? Yeah. Right? So it's that idea that the world is not coming at you, but rather you're creating the world from your projection in ultimate reality. So there are actual meditative states where you can have what's called the direct perception of emptiness. It's an experience in which you can have and you can practice to achieve it within this lifetime, certainly, to be able to understand what it is that you're projecting onto. It's the emptiness, is what they call it, of the, it's emptiness is what it is. So you're projecting onto me, and there is something that you're projecting onto. What am I empty of? Does that make sense? I know it's a little heady, but ultimately what is powerful about that concept is that you then start to realize that if the world isn't coming at you, but rather you're projecting onto the world, that it gives you agency and it gives you potential to then decide how you want to create your world. It doesn't happen overnight, I'll tell you that. But it does happen over time. And it means that this idea, I think, that most of us have, this narrative we have that we're kind of victims of circumstances, situations, isn't entirely true. That it's possible that, and like Santi said, there are certain things, right, where there's your karma, your past, that is forced upon you, right? So, for instance, you're in a situation and you're at a restaurant and someone decides to, I don't know, someone randomly comes up to you and grabs a glass of wine or water and throws it in your face, right? Mm-hmm. If that was happening to all of us, each one of us individually at a restaurant, we would all act accordingly based on our own karma. Mm-hmm. And you can't help it at that moment, whatever that is, whether you're in shock, whether you're angry, whatever that instinct is, you can't help that flare up, right? How many times have you been angry and you want to stop it, but you can't? It's like it's so out of control that you can't stop that from happening. So when those karmic seeds ripen at that moment, when it flares or when it manifests, there's nothing you can do to stop that from happening, but what you can stop from that feeling to arise, that affliction to happen, but what you can stop is from replanting that karmic seed to happen again. So when someone yells at you, you have that instinct that comes up in your mind, in your heart, whatever that is, and you feel it. Now you have a choice. In that moment, you have two choices. Do I want to have someone continue yelling at me again by planting a karmic seed by yelling back so that it's going to happen again, right? Or am I going to stop it here, right? So what it means is that then you start looking at the world of how do I start to plant the right seeds right now so that I can reap it in the future. Okay? Does that make sense for everyone? Okay. I hear it every time, and it's just so profound to me. And it's something that it's like you understand intellectually, and then you do something, and you're like, oh man, I forgot. You know, it's not ingrained in the way we think, and when you start thinking about how the subtleties of how you behave and how you speak and how you react to people and even including yourself, by the way, right? How you treat yourself. If you start realizing that those actions and those thinkings are the things that are going to create your future, then it does start to change and shift the way that you behave. Not for your current self, but for your future self. You're like, oh, my future, I know myself well enough. For my future self, I don't want my future self to deal with that or this anymore. I want to stop it, right? And so that's what this idea of karma is. That's what this idea of emptiness is. And whenever you hear karma, in a Tibetan Buddhist class, you should always have it being paired with karma and emptiness. They're two sides of the coin. They come together. Because your karma is what creates your future, right? But emptiness is how you realize that that's the screen in which you project onto based on your karma that's forced upon you. Okay? All right. Okay. So back to creating a schism. So there's a lot, we're going to go into this a little bit in terms of dividing a sangha. This one in particular, they say that if you divide a sangha, that you actually just don't go to hell, but there are different realms of hells. There's different tiers. You go to the lowest hell for this one in particular. And they say it takes what's called one parkalpa. So you'll hear this word sometimes, parkalpa or kalpa. It's a Sanskrit, it's a Hindu, in Buddhist, within the Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. It's a different term that's been used in the scripture. It's really speaking about a long period of time. So usually kalpa is really talking about the time between creation and recreation of a world or universe. The idea is that the world has been recreated multiple times, bazillion times. And there's a time in between a creation and the recreation of a world or a universe, and that's what's called a kalpa. They say that I've heard, and Geshe has talked about how there are different practitioners that have tried to figure out what that time is, specifically, like how many years it is. I have not heard an actual number. I've just heard like trillions of years. It's a long time. And the reason that's brought up is that if you divide a sangha, they're saying that you go to the lowest hell realm and that you'll be there for one kalpa, which just means a long time. Like, just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't break up a sangha. It's not a good idea. But it comes up a lot. And I think that one of the reasons it comes up so much is that sanghas always have, like if you're in any type of Dharma organization, they always have these, like, not always, but often you'll see kind of breakups and together, you know. And I think that there's a lot of emphasis on that so that we understand the karmic implication of what that means, of how we participate in that, what that looks like, and just being cognizant of how best to manage your own actions and how you speak and where you decide to lie in the landscape of sanghas forming and reforming. Does that make sense? Okay.
But you can purify this misdeed.
You can technically purify. With these 5?
Yeah, like to lessen the effect.
Yeah, I think you can purify it. Sure, I would say that you can probably purify it to lessen the effect. But I would probably also say that, you kill any of these people or break up a sangha, and the effects are probably, from the sense that I get, it's just quite drastic. Yeah. You might be purifying it for more lifetimes than... No, yeah. There is a profile of someone who actually creates a schism, though, which is interesting. They actually create a profile of that kind of person. And so in the teachings and the Abhidharma system, they say that this is actually a pattern. It's not something that's happened once in the time duration of this planet, but it's something that happens every time a planet or a universe is created and then destroyed. The first one is that whoever creates a schism is going to be a fully ordained monk. The second one is that this person is usually charismatic and has, for the most part, good morality, or at least comes off as having good morality, and is very intelligent. And they have this ability to entice people to want to break up and to take sides. They also talk about how they set 5 inaccurate rules to get to nirvana, which aren't true. They also say that they divide monks, obviously, who have not perceived selflessness directly. So in the Abhidharma system, they don't call it emptiness, but they call it no self. So it's dividing up monks who have not had that experience as of yet. Oop, okay, that's it. Sorry, let me go back. And that's for those of you that are writing notes.
Like, how do we define dividing? Is it
Breaking
like,
up a group?
Yeah, like causing people to disagree and like stop talking to each other, or like breaking off into different schools, or like, what do we mean? Like, or you guys take this street, I'll take that street.
I think that the way that I've interpreted is actually breaking up a group. It's an actual break of the group. It's a disruption that happens in the group, yeah. Like a massive disruption that happens.
Over agreeing on like an idea or concept. Or is it dividing through, you know what I mean? Like,
I think it's the feeling that I get about it is that it's not maybe. It might be over. I mean, it may look like it's. The point is that it's not. You're not making efforts to keep a group together. You're making an effort to break them apart and dispel them. So whether it's over an idea or a concept or a philosophy or a decision or space or a location or a teacher, whatever it is, it's something that's starting to break a group apart. Yeah. Yeah, it's heavy.
You
Yes.
mentioned sort of in passing that old school have this other word, selflessness.
Yes, Abhidharma.
That in Abhidharma, the way that they measure your enlightenment is having some selflessness. And here, there's another way. And could you elaborate what you thought that difference was, or if it's just 2 different words?
It's just from what I understand, it's 2 different words.
So you're seeing that this insight that creates enlightenment is the same in the 2 different schools.
Well, Abhidharma
That's 2
system.
different words.
Abhidharma system is a lower school, and so they don't have enlightenment. It's up to nirvana.
So you're saying that their word is not sufficient.
No, I'm not saying that. It's just that's the word, that terms that they use. It's not about insufficient or sufficient.
You don't call it enlightenment.
They don't call enlightenment. Mm-hmm. And they call, instead of emptiness, they call it no self. Yeah. So just from my understanding, it's just a different terminology that they use. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The decider of whether or not there is a schism occurring, there's a lot of different things that happen. The perceiver of the situation, and then the perceived catalyst for that situation.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of Wild Wild West or whatever, Wild Country.
The West?
No.
Netflix? Oh.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
And Sheila.
Sheila. Yeah. You guys didn't see that?
Yeah.
Documentary? it's an interesting situation, but it brings me to just all of these main factors are given to us as warnings a little bit differently than we would observe our the centrifugal circles around some of our vows or things to be aware of.
Yeah.
Where, it's, I guess what I'm asking is, how do we respond to this as practitioners that in this case do not feel that they follow under this profile of who can create a schism, therefore are we free, and is it something we should as practitioners be wary of within the community? How can we make this powerful in terms of our getting to enlightenment?
Well, this particular schism that they're talking about is just so I'm clear, is different than a schism. This is like the schism.
Okay.
If that helps any.
So it's more like the fable of schisms.
It's kind of, yeah, because there are, so I'm going to just move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
There are 6 periods when this schism is possible. So it is kind of, or when it's impossible to happen, because there are, it's considered a time where it's considered a time where it's a specific kind of schism. So there are different schisms that you experience, and then there are bigger schisms that will happen. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I see it.
Yeah. So the first one, and they call it the breaking of the wheel. And the first one is, so there's 6 periods when a schism is impossible to happen. The first one is not at the beginning of the wheel, meaning just after the Buddha has begun teaching. So this is when the Buddha is actually present on the earth, which currently we don't have that. So even in your lifetime, if you were an ordained monk, you probably couldn't achieve this type of schism.
What? Random question: when we say monk, we mean monk or nun?
In the scripture, they say monk. But I don't know if it's just because they're being sexist. Because back then there weren't nuns. At this time when the scripture was, from my understanding at this time, I don't ever hear of, they always talk about it in ordained people as monks. It's always in the male form. I think females, like nuns, came in much later in that. Mm-hmm.
So it refers to the historical Buddha?
Yeah, the Shakyamuni Buddha. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The second one is not at the end, meaning as Lord Buddha enters his final nirvana. And they talk about final nirvana, meaning when the Buddha is ready to withdraw his emanation from the planet.
What is his emanation? Like him appearing to, okay.
In human form.
Got it.
It's kind of strange. Like this part is, I have to say, even for myself, I'm like, that is so interesting. They like really map it out, saying these are the 6 times where it's impossible. This is a schism that could happen, and this is what it would look like when it does. It's fascinating, yeah.
And the wheel you're referring to the cycle of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So beginning of the wheel means what? At birth?
Well, no, this is the beginning of the wheel is talking about the 3 turnings of the wheel. So this is when the Buddha starts to teach. So they're saying like the schism from when he starts teaching, there's on planet, there's a 12-year period where no schisms will happen. And then after that 12-year period, that schisms will start to happen, if it does, after he's on the planet. The third one is not until there are faults in teachings as far as the views of followers and their morality. So some sort of corruption has to happen. And what they're basically implying and saying is that when sanghas come together, actually, I'm sorry, I just remembered this. When they talk about sanghas and taking apart sanghas, it means the Buddha's sangha. Sorry, that's a very big point that I just forgot. It doesn't mean any Sangha. It means the Buddha Sangha, so his students, the monks that follow him. So it's impossible for us, unless in our lifetime we do see an emanation of the Buddha, but at this very moment, that would be impossible for you to actually achieve, or anyone to achieve. So what they're saying is that when the Buddha starts teaching, that the first 12 years, there's enthusiasm, there's excitement, it's new information, and it's after that 12-year period where then monks and practitioners will start to kind of deviate, and that's when corruption begins. And so they're saying that if a schism does happen, it's after that 12-year period.
Isn't this a teaching for us to live our life? I mean, you're making it sound like it's an historical teaching.
It's a historical teaching, and it is also something to just note of, because what they're basically saying is at some point it will happen, and so you should just be aware of it.
Maybe you'll remember it in a future lifetime.
Planting that seed right now for your future lifetime.
So are you saying that 1 and 2, between 1 and 2, that's at least 12 years? That's 12
Yeah.
years?
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm saying that from number 1 at the beginning, I'm saying that schisms won't happen at the start. So after the Buddha starts teaching on number 1, it will be after 12 years if a schism does happen. But the first 12 years, there will be no schism of his teaching.
so it'll be like there will be 12 years, and then there will be 4 for teaching after that?
Yeah.
Sometime after that?
Yeah. Some sort of corruption will happen after the 12 year. But the Buddha could be on the planet longer than 12 years. But it's just the first 12 years are saying there will be no schism that will take place while he starts teaching on the planet. Does anyone know, this is just such a random question, does anyone know how long Jesus was teaching and documented for?
33 years.
Was it?
I mean, that's how old he was.
Jesus.
Before he died.
It was 33 years.
Shakyamuni was 52, right? 51?
He was 82.
No,
right?
Was it?
No, he taught for 51 or 52 years.
But Jesus didn't teach that whole time.
Right, there was time.
That's when he was killed.
Yeah, there's time in between. I'm just curious. It's so random. Maybe not that random. Number 4, there is not until the appearance of one of the great pairs. So there's 2 practitioners that they say have to be present in order. They're called the supreme pair or the great pair. Shariputra and Maragayayana. Because they're technically these 2 main disciples that they're saying that will come in and they will actually repair the schism within a 24-hour period. And during that time, that 24-hour period, they say that no realizations will happen. People will not be able to meditate. That there is no one that can have the direct perception of emptiness. Number 5 is that not after Lord Buddha has passed on. So they're saying while he's passing or during that process, there'll be so much grief and sadness that there will be unity within the Sangha, but the schism won't happen because there's no space for that. And the 6th one is not until there are separate monastic residences. So, the main takeaway is really, there's this schism, and then there are going to be more conventional schisms that some of us will experience depending how long you are in different sanghas. The main takeaway really is that wherever you are within different groups, if there are schisms that happen, if there's some sort of disruption that happens, it's in your best interest to not karmically to get involved in that. Find a peaceful way. I will just say for my own self in different sanghas I've been in, when there have been disruption, it's been my practice to not form judgments, and it doesn't mean that I'm not educated, but I will also be very clear for myself and other practitioners where I stand, and I stand with the practice. and I'm not so big on taking sides of people. For me, it's the content of the teachings, and that's where I lie. And where the personalities and I tend to not get involved in that. It's not something of interest to me. I think that the purity, and we've talked about this multiple times in different classes, but I do think that the purity lies in the teachings themselves. And my practice lies in that and the content of what I learn. And I bring this up because depending how long you are going to be in different groups, you'll see tensions that arise and friction and, people that rub you the wrong way. And sometimes you'll realize that you're the one that's actually creating the schism, not someone else. You'll be like, it's them. And you will actually be like, actually, it's probably you that's creating disruption. But just something to be aware of and understand that as you become more in depth with your spiritual practice, you will start to create community. And with community, we're human, there are natural dysfunctions that will happen and situations that do occur. So in that, understand what that means karmically for you and how you want to navigate those waters. Okay. Yes?
So you're saying then, just being aware if we are in a sangha, in a community, that if we do create any type of disruption or tension, that does come with maybe a higher or a deeper negative
karma. Yeah, it does.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good.
Really
Totally.
Yeah.
And and sometimes you'll see people in different organizations that are, in this situation, the monk that would be doing this will know what that person is doing. But in a lot of times, conventionally speaking, you'll see people come in and they really think that they're doing something for better. Like it's really coming from a place of, I think this is what's better. Sometimes they won't even know that it's disruptive. And that goes the same thing for yourself. So hence why it's so important of self-awareness and understanding your mind and why we meditate and so that you can understand the subtleties of, am I doing this because it's coming from a place of generosity and compassion and wanting to bring people together? Or is there an affliction that I'm feeding that's trying to create separation? Is there an ego that's coming into play? Like, where does my intention lie specifically? And that's something where someone can tell you one thing or another, but no one can read your mind the way that you can. So you only know that intention. And that also I think this is interesting in terms of just, yes, it applies, like the karmic implication is higher when you're dealing with spiritual practitioners. But I also think it lies within family. And I think it lies within your colleagues in your world and your friend. Are you someone that's creating more peace in the world? Or are you creating someone more disruption? And what does that look like? And how do you understand that implication, right? And what is your moral and ethical responsibility there? And just being aware of that. Because I find that a lot of New Yorkers, I'm going to say this, but I do find a lot of New Yorkers, we come with our warrior outfits and our toolkits to prove a point and to make a point and to defend ourselves and especially in the workplace. And sometimes there are plenty of people that are looked highly upon because they're disruptors and they're always saying the shit that no one else wants to say. And that's like so cool because they're such badass and whatnot. And I think that, I think that one thing as practitioners that you look at is, it's not so much whether you're badass or not, but what's the intention that you're coming to play with? Like what stance are you taking? And how that's expressed is one thing, but to just be a badass for the sake of being a badass is not really worthwhile karmically. It just makes no sense. You're just disrupting for the sake of being that disruptor. So how you act, how you behave, how you speak, how you think about your responsibility of are you someone that can bring people together, I think is incredibly important and valuable. And understanding that it's not just about what you get out of the situation, but how do you contribute to a larger community. Yeah. I think that goes the same for social media as well, I will say. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
And it's possibly covered this because
No, please.
You're saying that Buddha is no longer on our current Earth or in our universe. So is this under the assumption that like this happens every time there's a new world created, so it can never happen in our lifetime because presumably we're all going to die on this current.
It could happen it could happen on this planet. It just may not happen during our physical lifetime.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a Buddha back on the planet for this whole cycle to start again.
Yeah.
Got it.
But the other idea too is that yes. For this section, yes, that is true. Is what they're saying. Yeah. Okay. Number 5. Can you say Deshigla? Nen Sem Gi Trap Jipa. Or Jimba, I'm sorry. Jimba. Yeah. So Deshik is Buddha. La is to him. Nen is evil. Sem is intention. Gi is wit. Trak is blood. Jibba is to draw. Ming, what do you think it says?
To draw blood with evil intentions from the Buddha. Take his blood.
To do evil.
Evil, yeah. Evil intentions.
It's basically saying to try to kill
Whoa.
the Buddha. Yeah, don't do that.
Why isn't it just Deshik Supa?
I don't know. I guess it could have been. Yeah. So this is to try to kill the Buddha with an evil intention.
A Buddha, not the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. It's saying a Buddha.
So any person that is.
Well, there's so many Buddhas.
Buddhahood.
Yeah, there's like thousands of Buddhas.
That's not evil intention.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good? Okay, we're moving on. Okay, we're going to just cruise through these last ones. Second, so there's 2 things that make these 5 actions so bad. The first one, can you say Pempe Shi? So Pempe is help and Shi is basis. That means, I'm going to go back. Pempe is help, Shi is basis. So out of the 5 heinous deeds, there are 2 that have helped you specifically. Do you remember the 5? So we have mom, killing dad, killing arhat, dividing a sangha, and attempting. There's 3 murders, dividing a sangha, and attempt to murder, right?
Yes.
5 things. Out of the 5, where are the 2 that have helped you specifically?
Your parents.
Your mom and dad, yeah. So what they're saying here is the reason why it's so bad to kill them is because, what you have said actually, is because they give you life. And that's such an extraordinary gift because the ability to give you human life is to be able to give you the possibility to reach enlightenment. You have the mental capacity and the discretion and the aptitude to actually reach enlightenment. So there's kind of 2 attitudes towards the idea of Pempe Shi. There's one of reject and one of eliminate. To reject them is basically rejecting the idea of your potential of Buddhahood. If you're rejecting them, right? Which you're alluding to, right? When you're rejecting your parents, you're alluding, and when we see rejecting, it means like estrangement. It kind of means like, I don't need this, I don't need them. So funny, when I was prepping for class on the weekend, because it was Easter weekend, we had a lot of family gatherings. It was mine on Saturday and Armando's on Sunday. It was a lot of family. And I said in passing to him, I was like, it's like work with no pay. like working all weekend, these 8-hour days. It was so much work, and I was a bit frustrated. It's like I'm in pain. It's so much work, and it's like overtime. And then I stopped myself, and I was like, well, I did get paid. They did give me my life, so there's something there. And I saw myself catching. And food. They gave me life and food. So then I was, grateful and sent my blessing. But it was interesting in that moment. It was like, oh, it's so many hours. So one is rejecting, and the second one is eliminating them, right? It's actually to kill them, or to start taking the action to kill them. Eliminate. Reminds me of like Game of Thrones. Okay, so those are two. The second one, so that's mother and father, because they've helped you significantly, right? The second one, can you say Yuntin? Gishi. Okay, so Yuntin is extraordinary. Gi is object, and Shi is qualities. So the idea here is that the Buddha, the Sangha, and Arhats are extraordinary objects. It means that when you reject any one of those three, and when they say when you're rejecting them, it means there's no reverence, that there's kind of bad deeds that are onto them, that you think that all of them or one of them are just garbage. It's just useless. Elimination here means you can't technically eliminate the Buddha, so it would be elimination of Sangha or Arhat. And the idea too is that they say that the unity of the Sangha is the Dharmakaya, right? What's the Dharmakaya?
Buddhist form body.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom body.
Wisdom, yeah. It's a wisdom body. So like a Sangha is actually the Dharmakaya, so that's why it's so bad. Okay. And it's a very listy class tonight. Just so you know, the Garupa lineage tends to be very listy. That's the lineage that we're in. It's the same lineage of the Dalai Lama, just so you know. Okay. There's the order of how bad the 5 are. So this is the top 5. The first one is causing a schism, is number 1, because you're attacking the Dharma body. Okay. The second one is trying to kill a Buddha, because then you're attacking the form body. The third one is killing an Arhat. The fourth one is killing your mother. And the fifth one is killing your father. It makes sense? Okay.
Do they mention what hell or where you go if you try to kill the Buddha?
No, they doesn't say which hell you go to.
They just know specifically the worst one.
It's the first one, yeah.
It's hell.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like really, right. Yeah. That's actually good. Really, Ming? I mean, it's hell. Level 1 or 5, really?
Like mothers who die in childbirth.
Yeah.
Like the baby probably didn't have the.
Yeah, no, you're not killing your mom then.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her mom's. No, that's not the same. Yeah, but that's a good question.
I have a question. I seem to remember something about there was somebody who had put the Sangha back together who was a woman. Did we learn that in class? And then that everyone thought that a woman was bad, and then someone who thought the woman was bad turn into a woman, something like that. Do you know? Does that sound familiar at all?
No,
No?
but I love it. It sounds right to me. I mean, if someone's going to bring the world together. No, I don't remember that.
Okay. I'll check my notes.
Okay, let me think about it too. If there was something that was taught. Yeah, I'll check my notes too,
Okay.
in case I brought it up and have forgotten.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, last two. These are just on your, oh yes.
If you kill their son.
Just don't kill anybody. Yeah? Okay. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. We're just going to stick with that. Just no killing. No if. Just don't. So there's last two questions. There's 3 deeds of thought. So there's a debate that's in the scripture that says, well, I thought that all serious deeds, like the bad ones, were the mental ones, weren't they? And yet the 5 are actions. So like, how is it that these actions are the worst deeds and then the mental ones are not in there? And they're saying, the school's saying, no, you're right. It's just that when they talk about mental deeds, it's in regards to what's called the 3 passageways. Okay. And the 3 passageways are body, speech, and mind. So in reference to the 3 passageways, they're saying the worst deeds within the 3 passageways are actually the mental ones. Okay. I'm just going to go through these are the 10 non-virtues, but this is the breakdown. There are 10 non-virtues. There's actually more, but the top 10 are under body. It's killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Kind of sounds a little bit like the Bible, but that's okay. Speech is lying, divisive speech, hard words, meaningless talk, like idle talk. And mind is craving, ill will, and wrong view. Craving meaning not like craving for ice cream. Craving meaning attachment. Like having that attachment towards something. Okay. So what they're saying is within these 3, if we're talking about these 3, the worst one of those would actually be mind. Okay. Which is true. Okay, last one. There are technically, we're not going to cover it tonight, but there are 5 wrong deeds. And out of the 5, the worst one is called lokta, which is having a mistaken view, or it's having a wrong worldview. And the 5 deeds, I'll just say it very quickly, is, just so you know, you don't need to know this for homework in particular, but the 5 bad deeds would be having an extreme view, meaning that believing that everything that you see in front of you is self-existent. It is what it is. Second one is that what you don't see in front of you today, that it doesn't matter, it doesn't exist anyway. There's what's called like practicing mistaken morality, thinking that it's good. Like there are sometimes teachings out there where they'll say, in India they used to say, if you took a knife or a blade and stuck it upside down so the blade was up and you jumped on it and you were thinking good thoughts and holy thoughts, and if you jumped down, that if it didn't hurt you, you had good karma and you would reach enlightenment. Like things like that are not true. Don't do that. Just don't. I know, it's terrible. But there's like weird stuff out there that you'll hear people and different practices. You're like, that's weird. I don't know if that's really right. There's also thinking that your wrong view is great. It's awesome, it's perfect and great, and it's great to have it. And the last one is lokta, which is that it is wrong view in the sense that you don't believe in emptiness, but you also don't believe in karma. Okay? Yeah. Okay, that's it for tonight. We're going to close. Thanks for hanging in there.
Sashi
Puki
Jukshin Nito Drum
We're just going to close with a quick dedication meditation. So just take a moment and get settled in. Commend yourself for coming to class tonight, for making the effort, for being attentive, for staying open. Applaud your efforts. Rejoice. Think about something new that you felt or learned that was positive or of value to you, or a feeling that you had. Whatever goodness that you can recall. And dedicate that feeling to someone that you know, someone who is having a difficult time right now, whether in health or in mind or circumstances in their life. Dedicate the goodness that you felt tonight to this person, wishing that they find happiness, that they find what they need to find to free themselves from any kind of suffering, that they find joy, that they find their truth. Good night. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.